Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viewers around the world, welcome to this afternoon's edition of Vinyl Countdown. For anyone who hasn't seen it before, this is our weekly web show in which we invite a panel of sacrificial guests, sacrificial victims, willing guests, arrange the term as you see fit, into the studio in order to talk about their favourite album, why it's important to them, what it means to them, with the idea that they're going to persuade you, the viewers, to be able to vote for their album. So by the end of the show, in about 40 minutes' time, we can have one nominated as this week's Album of the Week. So wherever you're watching from, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, by all means, join in with your comments in the votes. You can share your reactions as we're going along, and then at the end I'll be encouraging you to vote, and then my colleague Sophie will be tallying up the scores on the doors, and then hopefully at the end of the show we will be able to announce this week's winner. So without further ado, let's begin by introducing this week's guests. So first into the studio is Eloise. Eloise, welcome.
Hiya, thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. How are you? All right?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Not bad, thank you. So you're joining us from, now I have to get this right, from the edge of MOD military training testing facility. Is that right, where you are in Surrey?
Yeah, kind of in the middle of the woods, surrounded by lots of gunfire and loud bangs from helicopters and things. So doing my best to survive on the internet.
Fantastic. How exciting. I think you must have the most dramatic background to anyone we've ever had on the show. So hopefully there won't be any sort of exciting interruptions to this afternoon's broadcast.
Hopefully not. Hopefully it all stays quiet. I don't think I can hear much right now, so fingers crossed.
And you've taken an hour out of your course. Remind me what you study. It's film and something else, isn't it?
History and film,
History,
yeah.
history
So
and film.
taking an hour out of thinking about what I should be doing and doing this instead.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us and nice to see you. And next
Thank
into the
you.
studio is Rhona. Welcome, Rhona.
Hi.
How are you? All right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. And similarly, you're taking an hour out from your biosciences. You're a postgrad doing biosciences, is that right?
PhD in chemistry.
Close, but not close. PhD in chemistry, right? Excellent. And you're in Canterbury, that's right. So
yes,
and hopefully you don't have any sort of military testing areas around where you are.
I certainly hope not, or else all of Canterbury has to be worried.
Fantastic. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And last into the studio as one of this week's panelists, please welcome with a violent round of applause, Mr. Ian Swatman. Ian, welcome.
Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm well. Nice to see you. How's life with you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to do this. It's wonderful to actually come on and talk music for an hour. So brilliant. Thank you.
It is a lovely opportunity and hopefully a fun one for us to actually sort of throw ideas around about music that's important to us. And you've certainly chosen an album that's important to you.
I have. Yeah, I have. The difficulty was me, which one of the ones shall I do? But I've gone for this one. So for a reason, which I'll tell you.
Excellent. Good. Looking forward to it. So nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. And then finally into the studio, not asking for your votes, campaigning for your votes, but here to share her pop punditry and encyclopedic wisdom for popular music. Please welcome my colleague, Sophie. Hello, Soph.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Are you well?
Yes, all good.
Good.
I've just had two nice strong coffees, so I'm right on it.
Marvel. So it's a caffeine-fueled vinyl countdown.
Yeah.
And do you have your pages of notes? I know that you make pages of notes each week when we're listening. So
there
we are. Marvelous. Fantastic. So without further ado, then let's get on with the show. So as I said at the beginning, where each of our guests will be invited into Speaker's Corner in order to share with us their choice. So Eloise, welcome into Speaker's Corner. So we'll start with you. So tell us and tell the viewers the album that you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
Okay, so when I thought about picking an album, I suddenly kind of thought all of the albums immediately popping into my head come from years and years and years ago that I listened to when I was younger. And consequently, it's kind of my dad's music and my mum's music. And I ended up picking Use Your Illusion 2 by Guns N' Roses. And I've got strong memories of kind of singing along to this music in the car. And it's one of those things that whenever it comes on now, I know all the lyrics, and I'm not quite sure why I know all the lyrics until I remember that I would have been singing it when I was about 4. So it's kind of a personal connection. But now I appreciate it more for the kind of music style it is in itself. And going back through the album, I kind of all the tracks are quite long and they're also different, and I think that's why I like it so much. You've got kind of proper rock songs and then ones that could kind of inverted commas be called ballads, so there's quite a kind of range of things there. In particular, there's kind of 4 or 5 songs from this album, such as Civil War, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Estranged, Don't Cry, and they're all kind of examples of the Guns N' Roses sound, I'd say, but in really different settings. So you've got the Bob Dylan cover, which arguably I think personally is one of those covers that starts to push towards rivaling the original. There's not many of those. And yeah, I guess it's just one of those albums that means a lot to me personally, and just it's quite varied. So I think most people could probably find a song, or at least part of a song, that they enjoy from an album like that.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's quite a sort of range of things going on in that album. So did you say that you grew up with it at the tender age of 4?
Yeah, actually, it's not on this album. As Ian said, I kind of had a job picking which album in particular. There's kind of a funny story in my family of me going around singing another Guns N' Roses song that probably wasn't particularly suitable for someone that age to be singing, but because I didn't know what it meant, it was just words. So it's kind of one of those enduring legacies of that might not have been a good idea, but it is what it is, and it'll always be quite funny now.
And so this was from your, did you say it was from your father's vinyl collection? You grew up with sort of listening to your dad's listening library?
Yeah, it was definitely that, and then it turned into playing it in the car on journeys. And another thing, it was because, as I said, the songs are quite long. If ever a radio station played the full version, it would be cause for lots of excitement, and the entire 11-minute track would get played and everyone would kind of be quiet in the car listening to it. So it was quite a, I guess, family listening experience. And both of my parents' favorite songs are from Guns N' Roses, particular like different albums. So it's definitely kind of a generational passed down thing that I'll always associate with kind of good family times.
And that's the lovely thing about music, and pop music in particular, isn't it? It becomes something that becomes significant to you when it's sort of associated with sort of family memories or childhood memories or something. It sort of puts them in a bottle, and every time you sort of return to the song, it opens that bottle and brings those memories anew. So that's Eloise's nomination, Use Your Illusion 2 by Guns N' Roses. Thank you, Eloise. So next into Speaker's Corner, we have our postgrad chemist, Rhona, who similarly, so Rhona, you have the floor, as it were. So tell us the album that you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
Yeah, so I chose The Golden Age by Woodkid. Similarly to Eloise, like it's kind of connected to my family, but kind of in the reverse way almost. So usually I'm the one who passes the music on to my mom in particular. Like we share music interests, but I'm the one who usually finds new music and then we share it. But this was one that she passed on to me, unusually. And actually it was passed on to her by my brother and his wife. They bought her this CD for Christmas. I think the year it came out, maybe the next year. And then this is when I was living at home. So it got played, on repeat, for the next couple of weeks, and it's kind of stayed in our family's kind of consciousness, and it's something our whole family really, really love. And it's, most people probably know the track Run Boy Run, which has been in like movies like Divergent, and it's in Umbrella Academy. And I think that and Iron and I Love You are in countless like trailers, ads, TV shows, movies. So I think most people are probably quite familiar with Woodkid. They just don't know it, and they don't know his name. And I think like he's a fantastic artist. And the rest of the album is also worth a listen as well. So it's kind of connecting that for people, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this today. But yeah, it's usually in music I sort of more go for things with like complicated harmonies and something I can sing to in the shower, like sing along to. But I think this just has like such a like epic feel to it. And it's very like orchestral, and honestly, the music that like hits me the most and gives me shivers is always those big epic things that you almost feel overwhelmed, but in like a good way. And this like really does that for me. And I think he just is amazing the way he'll build up layers and layers and layers of like different rhythms, like on top of each other, and lots of different instruments. And I'm a big fan of like orchestral music, and I love when it's used in a more modern setting as well. And pretty much I think all of the instruments he uses on this album, I would say, could probably be found in a classic orchestra, which I think is really interesting considering that it is like a modern, and honestly, I can't really quite like put his music in a genre. I don't know what you would like. I think I looked it up, and some people say like orchestral pop or like neo folk or like chamber pop. Like it's very interesting. Like I'm not sure if you can define his music. It's like something intangible almost. And I just love that he builds it up and then he always strips it right back and then throws you headlong into it again. And it's just such a wonderful ride. And I think like himself as a singer, I don't think that's the focus. I think the words can be quite like simple. The tunes can be quite simple, but I actually think that's a benefit because I think it might be cheesy, but it sort of makes the voice like one of the instruments in that layer that, you know, those layers he's building up. The voice is one of those layers. And I think if with everything that's going on underneath, if the voice was really complicated, I think it would overwhelm you, you know, you'd just be one too many things going on. And I just really like that mix. And I think the tracks towards the beginning kind of, as I say, follow that like building up, go down, build up again. But I think towards the end of the album, he kind of gets very interesting. He does a couple like pure instrumentals. He does like Where I Live, which is much more focused on lyrics and tune, I think. And then he does like two very like war centered songs, which almost like makes I really want him to write like a modern war requiem, like a Benjamin Britten war requiem almost. Yeah. And I mean, there's a Stabat Mater, and we've sung Stabat Mater in chamber choir. So what do you think, Dan? Put that on the list?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, lastly, I think I find him fascinating because I don't like, he's French. And it's interesting. He's not born anywhere near the sea, despite the fact that in his songs, he references the ocean and the sea over and over and over again. And he calls this album like an autobiography, which I find really interesting as well. But he actually, before he did this album, he directed music videos. So he directed music videos for like Katy Perry, like Lana Del Rey, Harry Styles, which is very interesting, the stuff he directs compared to the stuff he writes. So he's more of a director, and he directed some of his own videos. If you haven't looked at the video for Run Boy Run, I would really recommend it. He directed that, and it's an absolutely beautiful video. And he kind of did this album, and then he sort of disappeared. And obviously he's a graphic designer as well, so he was doing that in the background too. And I went and looked on Spotify last year, and it turns out there are a couple albums on there, but they're from like art shows. So he's been directing art shows and writing whole albums of music to go with, and like fashion shows and stuff. So that's what he's been doing. He's been writing whole albums of music for fashion shows. And then he released another album just last year, which is very different, much more like industrial and like restrained, but still very interesting. So I think just himself, like him as an artist, is very appealing to me as well. He's so creative, and it's just wonderful.
Fantastic, and yes, I mean it's interesting to hear you're talking about his kind of his directorial and the very visual element to his stuff, because I think for me when I was listening to it, it felt like it was a very cinematic
Yeah.
fact, it was music that was always conscious that there might be a visual element accompanying it, rather than it sort of being music in and of itself somehow. So, but yes, there was some of the textual writing is very interesting, and perhaps we'll come back to explore that in a bit more detail shortly. So, thank you, Rhona, for your nomination of The Golden Age by Woodkid. And our final panelist vying for your votes in Speakers Corner this week is Ian Swatman, who joins us from the midst of a very busy working life, and I'm very grateful to Ian for having taken time out to join us this afternoon. So, Ian, you have the floor. Tell us and the viewers at home the album that you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
Okay, so my album is Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. It will be no surprise that I've chosen that album to anybody who knows me, but I think the reason I've chosen Songs in the Key of Life is that it was the first album I think I bought. I was 15 when the album came out, and of course prior to Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder had an incredibly productive period with albums that equally could take place on a show as part of a show like this. In Innovision's Talking Book, Music in My Mind, and so on. But you know when the work I do with the uni, Stevie tune always has a part in all the gigs I do. But the thing is that it was actually seeing him live in '81 that started this sort of power of music thing, that I saw him live, and I'd not quite seen anything like it at the time. And Songs in the Key of Life was at a time when him as an artist, he, of course, was part of the Motown factory, really, turning out all the hits in the days of Smokey Robinson, the Temptations, and the Four Tops. But he was obviously somebody that was going to break away from that hit factory thing. Although the music is timeless, let's be honest, Motown is as popular today as it was then. And he negotiated a deal, which, if you can imagine, in the early 70s for $37 million, which is a lot of money in any generation. And he basically put Motown through the ringers, because where he was turning out albums quite prolifically, this one took him about 2 years. And he used to appear with T-shirts on with "We're almost finished," and of course they weren't really interested in when are you finished, because that was all it was. But it became a sort of a double album masterpiece with an extra EP, and I just do think it is one of those timeless records that you could virtually go to every song on the album. There isn't really a weak song. And the lyrics of every song have some relevance in some way. I mean, Stevie Wonder's always been very much preached the unity of everybody loving each other and that whole sort of joy of life. Every emotion from birth, death, love, loss is on the album. And there are so many different styles represented as well. And it was him, I mean, as I say, it was one of a stream of albums, but there was everything about it is sort of makes a statement. And I think from my point of view, as an older generation person, there aren't many people left in the music industry today that are genuinely connected to the timeline and development of popular music. Your James Browns, your Bob Marleys, your Jimi Hendrix, going right back through to Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong. And I think Stevie Wonder is one of the few left at 70 years old. And this album, the opening song on the album, Love's in Need of Love Today, and without getting all corny about it, but those opening lyrics, good morning, evening, friends, here's your friendly announcer, serious news to pass on everybody. What I'm about to say could mean the world's disaster, could change your joy and laughter to tears and pain. It seems pretty relevant for where we are today. Yeah. And on it goes. It's been sampled, Pastime Paradise. A younger generation will all know Gangster Paradise, which of course was totally sampled from Pastime Paradise. Knocks Me Off My Feet, which was one of the first sort of love songs on the album, is an absolutely stunning track. And there are tracks on it that have become, I mean, if there is a funkier track on the planet, than I wish. I want to hear it. It's as sensational live as it is on the album. And Sir Duke, which in Stevie's way pays homage to the greats, Basie Miller, Satchmo, and the king of all, Sir Duke. And I've always found in my role in music education that Sir Duke, well, what's Sir Duke? Well, it's Duke Ellington, isn't it? That's what it's about. It's actually paying homage to the whole history and development of jazz, and that opening riff that you get in Sir Duke has just become so iconic. Powerful songs on it that aren't really known. Black Man, what a song, and it's a history lesson. The whole thing is a history lesson as it travels through the sort of whole development. And of course, Isn't She Lovely, which is actually written about his daughter Aisha, who frequently tours with Stevie as one of his backing vocalists. And the opening on the album has got Aisha crying. That's the opening sound of her crying that he sampled and put on the album. And he was flatly refused after that to actually release that song as a single. I think on the album it lasts 6 or 7 minutes, and there is an amazing making of Songs in the Key of Life DVD when he sits at their desk listening to the original takes, and you get to basically all hear his cock-ups on the harmonica, which is great, which is absolutely tremendous. I was lucky enough to see him perform this album in its entirety about 3 or 4 years ago in Hyde Park, and it was quite a colossal thing because he sat down at 6:30 in Hyde Park, and as he sat at the piano, he said, "Well, here we go." And he played until by 10 o'clock, he'd done the whole album, track after track after track, in album order, and then played a half an hour of his hits under the guise of a different DJ. But he played, the Superstitions and all the other songs. So I think every song in its own way, the thing that always amazes me is that Stevie Wonder only had two UK number ones, which was I Just Called to Say I Love You, which I think is, which was, but I always said, because it is a great sing-along when he does it live, but it was part of a film soundtrack. It was The Woman in Red. And of course the immortal Ebony and Ivory, which was obviously him and Paul McCartney, which came out of a session in Montserrat. But I think every song, the reason that this album is timeless for me is that you can go to any song on the album and it says something, whatever the emotion, the actual emotion is. And I think it was just before he'd released it. He had a year without releasing an album, and Paul Simon thanked him for not releasing an album because it would mean he would win the Grammy. And then Elton John, similarly at the end of it, Elton John, not long after this was released, said he was fairly sure that Stevie Wonder had just written the greatest album that had ever been done, which was that's 30 years ago, but it still stands up very well. And I just think it's an epic piece of work on every level from an epic individual. There you go.
Indeed, thank you, Ian. Yes, I mean it's as you say, it's one of these sort of enduring masterpieces, isn't it? That since I love the idea that that they had to wear T-shirts saying we're nearly finished or we're almost there. I feel I could certainly do with that here in the music department sometimes.
Absolutely.
As you get closer to a gig, you could just run around wearing those. We're so close. Well,
it was of course Berry Gordy who was running Motown. They wanted to control everything and obviously, somebody signing a £37 million record deal was pretty serious stuff, but you want to see something for it. And because they joke, I think, they're both still alive, fortunately, but they joke, well, it's been worth it. You've had every penny out of me sort of thing. But
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, Sophie, you've been diligently listening to these albums behind the scene as you do each week. How was it for you this week with all the choices that you had?
Yeah, really interesting. It's oh gosh, how do I put it? I don't know. There are types of music there. Sorry, Eloise. I don't know what to do with it. It's really funny. I remember when Guns N' Roses first came out when I was still a teenager, and one of my best friends absolutely loves "Sweet Child of Mine," and I would just listen to it and go. It kind of just bounces off me like water on the pavement or something. I don't really know. Yeah, there's something really lacking in me. I'm terribly sorry about that. I don't dislike it. I can't get into it in any kind of way. And if I was honest, the one where they swear a lot, don't get me wrong, I love a good bit of swearing. Anybody who knows me and my potty mouth. But it felt quite kind of like I was being pelted by, I don't know. Anyway, so I can't get on board with that one. And that's my deficiency. I can still appreciate that it's great musicianship. The other thing I have to say was some of this rock singing. It always makes my throat hurt. I don't know how they do it, and I just kind of go, ooh, it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. But I mean, so many people love heavy metal and stuff like that, and I'm just a poorer person for that, I'm afraid, I think. Woodkid, never heard of him before. The minute I started listening to it, you used the very word, Rhona, epic. I just went, wow, this is so epic. But at the same time, it immediately brought into my mind lots of other things. I don't know if anybody has ever said to you, and when I started, after I listened to it once, I started looking at what reviews people had written about it when it came out. And the very first thing I thought when I heard his vocals was how he sounded like Anthony Hegarty. Have you heard of a band called Anthony and the Johnsons? He sounds exactly like him. It's extraordinary. I mean, obviously, this guy, Johan, is not singing in his mother tongue and everything, and you can't help the way your voice sounds, but it is almost exact. It's amazing. Anyway, I mean, yes, it's very cinematic, isn't it? The sound, it's so big and bold and some of the intricacies in the sounds that he's created are really lovely. I mean, there's a track that Anthony Hegarty sang on a Bjork album called Volta, called what's it called? The Dull Flames of Desire. And actually you could, if you took Bjork off it and lifted it, it would fit right into a Woodkid album. But I mean, I still really super enjoyed it. And his videos are quite impactful, aren't they? They're very beautiful.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally convinced by some of the lyrics. Again, it could be because English isn't his mother tongue.
I mean, as I say, I hold my hand up, and I think that I don't focus on the lyrics when I listen to it, honestly. Sure. And I think listening to it on headphones is good because you get the instrumentals more even with the vocal, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Because I think I think your point about his voice, like I don't think he has an amazing voice. I don't think he has like a huge range. Sure. But I think I'm glad he didn't let that stop him from making this, because I think like that's not the point. No, like his voice is just part of it, part of the tapestry, Yeah,
it's definitely kind of like a soundscape, isn't it? Almost with a vocal on it. I totally agree. And a lot of the kind of orchestration parts of it did put me in mind of Divine Comedy. If you take off the lyrics and there's that kind of wide orchestration and stuff. I really enjoyed it. Super enjoyed it, and thank you for introducing him to me. Never heard of him.
I'm glad.
And then to Ian, I mean, what do you say about Stevie? I was given this album by a friend on a CD about 7 years ago. She sent me a package, an old uni mate, of 2 or 3 CDs, and this was one of them. And it felt very much like kind of love my Stevie Wonder or music taste. And I never listened to it, and I feel shamed to this day that I never did. So sorry, Kay. She won't be listening, but I'll just say it anyway. It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I think some of his more love songs are a bit sentimental for me, but I still love it all. I mean, the thing I most love about Stevie Wonder is he's so, what's the word I want? There's nothing, modern life hasn't jaundiced him. Life hasn't jaundiced him. There's something so direct. A nasty way of putting it would be naive or gauche or anything, but I wouldn't say that. I really love that wide-eyed also sounds a bit rude, doesn't it? I don't mean it like that. I love that.
Fresh.
But it's that directness. There's no filter in it. There's no embarrassment. There's no self-awareness in his stuff. He's just doing it. It's absolutely direct. And I absolutely adore that about his stuff. And there's loads of these songs I didn't know. And I love all the different styles. What was it I wrote down? I think some of because it's of its age, isn't it? Me and Dan were talking very early. I was talking about, gosh, isn't it funny listening, like the Stott Aitken Walkman awful 80s drums. You've then got the kind of fake strings on the keyboards in this album.
Yeah, that was of its time, though, because
Absolutely.
the one thing that anybody who works with Stevie Wonder will say is that because of his blindness, he doesn't generally have your normal working day. And I think it was I Wish, actually, on this album, his longtime bass player, Nathan Watts, who's still with him, they'd been out somewhere, and at 3 a.m, the story goes that Stevie rang him and said, I've got this great song, you've got to get to the studio now. And all the musicians are ways a notoriously bad timekeeper because he just works. And there's 2 or 3 stories which I won't bore you with now, but he, I think that thing about the sounds, he's also got this independence. And on Innovisions, for example, which was 72-ish, he plays all the tracks. So, of course, that Yamaha Dream Machine, as they called it, the opening strings on Village Ghetto Land, was because he had the machine at great expense that could suddenly play that multiphonic sound.
Yeah.
So it is very, very artificial, but it's that him once again, rather than having the string section in there, well, I'm going to do this because now this machine allows me to do it.
Sorry.
And it was just interesting because when he did the whole show live, and of course these days where things cost money, it was quite an epic thing because on the stage in Hyde Park, as well as 2 or 3 choirs, he had a full chamber orchestra on the stage. And so everything was, it was produced live. There was no backing tracks used. It was the real thing.
Yeah. I was going to say, actually, despite that machine nowadays into a modern ear sounding like, actually in a less amazing musician's hand, but that there are moments even now listening to it where he does stuff with it that is beautiful. It was what I was going to say, but it does remind you when you get to songs like If It's Magic, where you just have the acoustic harp. What a difference it makes, doesn't it, to have real instruments? And even nowadays.
Exactly. The harp player passed away before the release of the album.
Oh, right.
So when he actually sings that song, Saying There's Nothing Recorded, when he did that on his live tour, when he did the sort of Songs in the Key of Life live, he actually used the original backing track with Hair playing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
which was very sweet. So he sang along to Hair harp, although she passed away, as I say, before the album was released. I can't remember her name now. But
anyway, so thank you very much for finally making me listen to the album.
I was going to say the same because I obviously know Stevie Wonder and I know his big hits, but I've never sat down and listened to him ever. And actually, same with Guns N' Roses. To be honest, I know 1 or 2 of their songs. I've never sat down and listened. And I mean, certainly is an epic album. It's almost 2 hours, which is impressive.
That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
But it was really, it's really lovely. It's very easy to listen to, I think. And it's, I've just never experienced that before. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to go check out more of his stuff.
Brilliant.
Incredible.
And how about you, Eloise? What were your reactions to listening to the other choices this week?
On my notes, I've put basically what Rhona was saying about Woodkid. I'd never heard of him. And for The Shore, for example, I've just got like the orchestral elements of that were stunning and it was very cinematic. You could do an absolute kind of yeah, a film would be perfectly fitting for it, and such as Boat Song as well, the piano intro. Personally, I love a kind of good quiet piano intro, so that was also really beautiful. And with Stevie Wonder, obviously having been in big band, I've played some of them and I've known some of them.
Really?
I've kind of appreciated him, I guess, kind of as an artist, just separate from music I've played, if like that he's written. So like Have a Talk with God. My notes here say not entirely sure what's going on in that, but it's super fun. Like there's all these kind of weird sounds and noises, and it's like, okay, that's interesting, and I really like it. I don't know how that's being achieved, but it's quite different. And Sir Duke, as you said, is kind of a classic that most jazz musicians will have played or will have known or will have listened to, and it's just a bit of an iconic track, I think. So yeah, on board with what everyone said.
I mean, Sophie was slightly taking the mickey, because when we were listening to it a few days ago, she messaged me saying, "Oh, Contusion sounds like that kind of fusion jazz that you like so much, Dan." And it, absolutely, I mean, you know, listening to that. You work through the album and there's 3 songs, and then suddenly you're off into this kind of, it was very like, for anyone who knows Chick Corea's Return to Forever, the late Chick Corea, it's got that wonderfully inventive, fearsomely broad jazz fusion, which I immediately went, yep, I really like that, and so on. But I'm going to make a shameful confession here, Ian, that I slightly prefer Hotter Than July, which I think came out later.
Yeah, 81.
Yeah,
80.
I think I love Stevie Wonder when he's being that kind of gritty, funk driven. So like, as you say, I Wish and Contusion and so on. And I think because Hotter Than July begins with Did I Hear You Say You Love Me?
Great track.
Which is, yeah, that's right. And I remember listening to Hotter Than July when I was first moved down to London. I was on the bus a lot, and just kind of, that was my accompaniment to move, getting the bus around the streets of East London was Hotter Than July. And I think I just find it slightly funkier than because the one you've chosen is so diverse, isn't it? Because it's so long and there's an awful lot going on, that it includes lots of kind of sort of soft balladeering and so on, and the lovely kind of, as you say, Isn't She Lovely, and the sort of the more endearing things. But I love Stevie Wonder when he's being kind of gritty and funky, and so that's I think why Contusion was absolutely rang my bell more than Sophie's perhaps. But then I think Hotter Than July just edges it slightly for me. I don't know if that sacrifices our friendship.
No, I think you know, as I say, the first you know, the thing is, it's I you know, as well, obviously a lot younger people than me on here, you know what it's like when you're trying to find your musical, we all have to try and find that, we all hopefully find that musical moment in our life that inspires us to sing, to play, whatever it is. And obviously it's inspired me for like a career in music. But you know, you know, as a fairly innocent Hull lad, going down on a minibus down to Wembley in September of 1980 on a minibus with one of my mates, Charlie, another Hull City fan, in case he's watching. But we went, and I didn't really know what to expect. Although that same year I'd seen Bob Marley live in Crystal Palace, so it was a bit of a bumpy year, really. But I do remember at that time, and I can see it now in my mind, the lights coming on, because his shows were always so long. There was no show about it. You know, it was him and his band playing, because obviously you don't get choreography. It's playing music, all his shows. But I can see it now. The lights went up for the interval, and he'd just done Living for the City, I think. And the place was electric. At that time, I'd never felt anything like it. It was like, what is going on? And Hotter Than July with, you know, Master Blaster, which actually was a tribute to Bob Marley, wasn't it? And I still think Lately is one of the greatest ballads he's written. A friend of mine, actually, when I got married, we were going to have a ballad played while we signed the register. So this friend, David Rees-Williams, who's a phenomenal piano player, organist, he suggested he did Lately. And I said, David, you do know it's about somebody having an affair. So said it's not. I know it's instrumental, but lately I've had the strangest feeling, with no vivid reason here to find. It's not what you play at your wedding.
It's not an auspicious start.
Yeah, exactly. So he played "Ribbon in the Sky." I don't know if you know that ballad, "Ribbon in the Sky." He played that. I left the church to my jazz band playing "Who's Sorry Now," but never mind. That was Peter Cook's idea. That's true, actually. But there you go.
I wanted to make a counterpoint to Sophie's discussion on Guns N' Roses.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Because I think the kind of the feeling like, I can't remember how you described it, but like being like pelted or whatever it was. I think honestly that's one of the things I like about it, and similar, like, is it Rage Against the Machine, like the Battle for LA, like those kind of albums. I like that because it's angry, and like sometimes that's what you need to be listening to, is like if you're angry about the world and the state of the world and that kind of thing, like to hear someone else articulate it and be angry about it, you know, that's like very cathartic and just very like validating, and I find it very enjoyable, you know, to be pelted.
I think I just must be too lazy to get that kind of worked up about stuff. It's like when me and Dan were doing, I think it was just me and Dan doing a listening party with De La Soul album 3 Feet High and Rising yesterday. And one of the things I said to him, I was like, I was so delighted when this album came out, because prior to that, it was Public Enemy, Niggas with Attitude, and all that really angry stuff, which, although I could feel the energy, I found myself slightly shying away from, and I had no inroad into it, or into rap and into that hip hop and stuff, because it was this, for me, this kind of wall of stuff. And I'd seen like Do the Right Thing, you know, the Spike Lee film, which is about racial tensions on One Day in New York, and they use Fight the Power a lot. And I just, the minute De La Soul came out, I went, oh, I can do this. So I can't do that kind of, which I suppose might come across as a bit weird, knowing how shouty and kind of aggro I can be.
Honestly, I'm jealous, because I think, like, you know, not to get that worked up about it. Yeah, it's a good thing, but
I read Private Eye all the time. I mean, I don't know how
it's funny. It's interesting. Sorry, it's just interesting that it is a slightly older album, and yet it's still, like, for me, listening to it now, it's still so relevant, and it's still really, I think, like, that's something youth, I guess that's cyclical. Youth always has angst and anger and, you know, rage against the administration, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. And I think, I mean, yes, you're right. I enjoyed that sort of the aggressive swagger of Use Your Illusion 2, which came out at the same time as Use Your Illusion 1, didn't it? Both albums were released at the same time, and that's a colossal, a brace of double albums to present. And obviously the cinema loving part of me loved the fact that one of them was used in Terminator 2 and one of them was used in Days of Thunder. There's obviously a cinematic thread, you know, given that Rhona's ones are also, you know, they've got that kind of cinematic soundscape and so on. And the one, there's one where they're he's picking a fight with his critics, isn't he? And he's kind of taking them, get in the ring, I think it's called. And he's sort of scoring points off all the critics and all the detractors and so on. And I sort of, that made me slightly uncomfortable. Just you know, sort of, I'm not quite sure why. I think just because if someone, you know, criticizing you for your music and you use your music as a way of getting back at them rather than addressing their criticism outside of your music and not letting it, I don't know, maybe that's just me, you know, my natural shyness wouldn't allow me to take my issues into the public arena and take them on stage. But it's certainly a very pointed thing, isn't it? Right, this is them hitting back at the critics and so on. So I kind of, in a way, I appreciated that. And I liked one thing about Rhona, the album that you chose, is that for me, I mean, we've talked about instrumentation as we did with the Stevie Wonder album as well. You know, the way that the instrumentation, the sound world is created. For me, it's always about the way that people use French horn. I love the music of Michael Tippett and Richard Strauss, because they write brilliantly for the French horn, and the way that they use it and the sound colors. And there's a wonderful piece by Julian Anderson called Imagined Corners, which has a wonderful kind of way of orchestral writing for French horn. And that was something that struck me about the Woodkid album, is that he writes really well he uses them in a very kind of heroic fashion, doesn't he, very cinematically and so on. And that I really enjoyed that. Whenever somebody writes really well for the French horn, part of me goes, oh, I really like that. And so
that's why Yvonne Elliman, If I Can't Have You, is my favourite out of Saturday Night Fever. That's got massive French horns on it. Fantastic. Yeah, every time.
It's funny, with the whole. Sorry, it's the. Sorry, Sophie, go on, Karen.
No, I don't know. I'm just good. When I listen to it, I go French horn.
No, it's weird, all the way through. I was always a reggae, blues, and soul man, and things like Guns N' Roses or Black Sabbath and all that rock thing was just like, what is that all about? I was at college with a very interesting guy, a guy called Paul Wilson, who was a contradiction. He was a phenomenal Baroque flautist that's musical idol was Ozzy Osbourne. And then he went on. Paul works up in Glasgow, but he then went on to, you'll know this actually, but it's not a claim to fame because it was by accident, but he was also the guy that wrote the theme tune to Balamory, the BBC thing, which causes, so that really says something about his character. But he used to get me to try and listen to the heavy sort of rock stuff. But I have to say, as I've got older, the Guns N' Roses, AC/DC stuff, in the right time and place, I really enjoy the power of that stuff.
Yeah.
I just didn't get it before, but I think the raw, just go for it feel of it. It's not the sort of thing you'd listen to cure your insomnia, is it? But it's like, driving down the road or in the gym or something like that. There's nothing better than that. I listened to something tonight, I'm trying to think what it was now, but it was a compilation thing. And I think, certainly when you see, bands like Guns N' Roses live, I mean, not that I have, but, YouTube clips, it just looks like such great fun. Maybe if you were 30 years younger than me, but still like, wow, just to be in that raw atmosphere.
Do people still headbang at these concerts?
Not with my haircut, they don't.
And then I was wondering, maybe when I get to your age, Ian, I will appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe we could go together, Sophie. Yeah, I'll be about 85 when you get to my age.
I don't know. Yeah, right.
It's interesting with Woodkid. I think he toured once, and I'm not sure if he'll ever tour again, because I'm not sure, because his focus isn't purely on being an artist. Yeah. Or being a singer. Musician. But if you look at the clips, say for Iron, I think it was, he brings out 20, 25 people playing a drum each, doing the do, 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 do. And it just looks epic. I think when he does tour, he pulls out all the stops and just says right, if you're going to go for it. And, and it looks, his gigs look amazing, but I'm not sure how many of them he'll do, which is a pity.
It's that thing about, being the end of the line, because I saw Stevie Wonder a couple of years ago in Hyde Park. And if I'm honest, I've seen every tour since 80. And the last time I saw him, he just didn't feel on form to me. But then he did announce at the end he was waiting for a kidney transplant. So he's been really quite ill. But I just hope for one more tour. One more.
Yeah. Yes, because of course, sadly, we lost Chick Corea, didn't we, last week? The great jazz pianist.
It's with Chick Corea. I've been doing my Form 6s. I've been doing reggae this week, and of course, I had Year 6 one day talking about reggae and the origins and the Wailers, and I made the comment to them that there was only one surviving member of the Wailers, and I got home to found exactly, and it was really like that. So the next day, I announced that he was no longer surviving. But but what with Chris Barber and Bunny Wailer, Chick Corea, it's not been great, has it?
No, that's right. Yeah, we have to really enjoy these artists. I went to see Chick Corea in Leeds in my first year at uni, and there was a wonderful moment where he said, "I'm going to introduce you now to a musician who's inspired me," and he opened a book of Bach's 48 Preludes and Fugues. He started playing a Bach prelude, And that nightmare thing happens when you're in a concert as a pianist. The score closed in front of him. I don't know how new the book was, and it just shut. And it was wonderful because he just looked round at the audience and shrugged as if to say, "What on earth can you do?" And he carried on playing, and he moved from Bach into an improvised piece by Chick Corea. And there was almost you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began, and he got an ovation for it, and it was remarkable. Just out of Bach comes Chick Corea, so
brilliant.
So there we are. But to bring us back to this week's albums, a similarity I found to last week again is when I was listening to the Woodkid album. The lyrics, the sound of his voice reminded me of Tom Misch, which was Felicity's nomination. Tom Misch's Geography, and I think he's got that similar thing of the vocals aren't particularly well polished. It's not a classically trained, perhaps, or a really well produced, technically flawless sound, but it's much more characterable because of it. You can hear it's a bit like when you listen to someone like John Martin or someone, or as Ian was saying, AC/DC. There's something about those the rawness or the unpolished nature of the voice that actually gives it that character, I think, which was really striking. And I liked some, the sound world of Woodkid. There's one of the pieces begins with that kind of very bubbling flute textures and so on, and it was really kind of sonically very interesting. And so on. So it was good. So at this point in the show, this is for the viewers at home. This is where we need you to start voting. So in the comments, whatever platform you're watching on, now's your opportunity to start commenting and telling us which album of this week's nominations is going to be you're going to vote for, so that we can vote for an album of this week's winner. So just to recap what they are, we've got Ian coming in with Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. Rhona's brought The Golden Age by Woodkid to the table. And Eloise is hoping to persuade you to vote for Use Your Illusion 2 by Guns N' Roses. So vote now, vote live, don't vote after the show because your votes won't be counted, but you may still be charged.
So does the I Love Guns N' Roses count as a vote, do you think? Have we already got our vote? I think we do. I think Eloise is out in front with a vote from, I think it's Dominic King.
I think that counts as a vote. Yes, so that's one in the bag for you, Eloise, already. So anyone else who's watching, by all means, vote and make sure that we have yours too. I mean, it's been a very interesting week because they've been so different, haven't they? The three nominations. Apologies to anyone who was hoping that Adam Rose would be joining us with his nomination. Adam is unfortunately ill today and has had to withdraw, but we hope to invite him back as a panelist on a later show. But the three albums that we've had this week have been so different, haven't we? That sort of iconic Stevie Wonder double album, then the Use Your Illusion 2, the sort of stadium rock. And then Rhona's very cinematic one. So it's been quite a unique week in terms of the breadth of listening that Sophie and I have been forced to do. If you were to have a vote, Sophie, which I think you can vote, haven't we, Sophie?
Well, I voted last week, didn't I? And I didn't the week before. So I don't know whether I should or not. I wonder whether I should just be the moaner, I mean, this just as last thing for me is being older. It's got pluses and minuses. And one of the minuses for me, well, I think I'm missing out on a whole enjoyment of the rock thing. I mean, I definitely think that's a flaw in me. So I need to work on that. But the thing that makes me a bit sad was coming to Woodkid. And all I could hear were other things. And I think when you have so many references when you're older and you instantly hear other things, it stops you maybe enjoying or appreciating the whole package, and it's difficult to kind of get past that for me, but that saddens me.
Because of the breadth of your listening experience, you mean?
Well, yeah. I don't know about that, but
we've got a vote there for Stevie Wonder, so Ian, that puts you neck and neck with Eloise. So we just need one
they
more
like
vote.
all the albums. There we go. Look at that.
That's great.
Excellent.
Great albums. Yes. I mean, and that's the great thing about this show is that you simply, it simply makes you listen more. Roz, thank you. How to vote? Simply tell us in the comments exactly as you've asked your question. By all means, do the same. Tell us which album you would vote for, and that will count as a vote. And we can add that to Sophie's burgeoning tally.
Apropos of what genres Woodkid, I've just looked it up on Wikipedia. It's yet another Baroque pop. We had one of them.
Baroque pop.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
That's the second time something's come up with that. I've never heard of it before.
Orchestral pop, I think. Did you say that Rhona? That was one of the things you commented on. Is sometimes he's referred to as orchestral pop. I think that was
Woodkid.
There we are.
One each.
That makes it unbearably tense, doesn't it? One vote for each.
That's the best way. It's the best way.
That may or may not be my mother. Who knows?
I love the fact. I love the fact that you're not sure, Rhona, although presumably
it's espionage, okay? We don't have the same last name. It makes it easier to hide.
So you've let the cat out of the bag by
as I say, she did introduce me to it, so it's an honest vote.
But I see she's utilising the same subterfuge as Amy Tokel did the other week, because her mother didn't have the same surname either, but voted for Queen.
That's right. Although Carmen's gave the game away last week when both her mum and dad voted and had the same surname, didn't they? As well? And we were like, it's a stitch up.
Mackie all the way.
That's right. Yeah. So we've had votes for each of them. So it's a three-way tie this week. That's interesting.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So what do we think? Shall we leave it for 30 more seconds and see if there'll be a deal breaker?
Okay.
Oh no.
I could
Sorry if I give you all an earworm.
We had a school teacher who used to play that when we had to finish an essay. For the last 30 seconds, he would play it. And it did not help.
That's cruel. That's surely cruel. Adding to
unusual.
Dear oh me, oh dear. Well, it looks as though we're drawing to the end of the show, and it looks as though we might have to declare this a three-way tie. So it's not album of the week, but albums of the week. So my thanks to wait a minute.
I don't know how that counts.
Who's Frank Lonergan? Oh, right. It's your dad.
It's my dad.
So, Rhona, do you have anything to declare?
He is watching on YouTube, to be fair, but I think he doesn't know how to sign in and comment.
Okay.
And he doesn't have Facebook.
Okay, right.
But
So
I don't mind if we don't count it because it's third party.
It sounds genuine. It's not your mum just saying, right, there are 15 people here who do not have Facebook, but they're all voting for you, Rhona. Well, I think by the laws of the show, we have to accept that and say that means Rhona's this week's winner.
Yeah.
The cinematic pop, orchestral pop of Woodkid. So Rhona, well done, congratulations.
I guess I will take it by nepotism. I'll take it.
Dear me. But thank you to everyone, for the viewers at home, for watching and your comments and your votes, and the particularly the Rhona clan who've been watching in their droves. But
from Ireland.
From Ireland. So
amazing.
International viewers. And I'm very glad, Eloise, that nothing happened in your proximity to the alarming.
Yeah, we didn't get invaded. It's all good.
Terrific. So my thanks to this week's panel, to Rhona for coming along, and indeed for sweeping the board. To Eloise, all the way from Surrey. To Ian for coming along with his marvellous album by Stevie Wonder. To my colleague Sophie for sharing her pop punditry with everyone, and to you at home for watching. We'll be back again next Thursday, so the listening list for next Thursday's show will be out soon. So my thanks to all of you for watching along at home, and stay safe and well, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. So from me, thank you for watching.